themes, but it was really good to read these, so thank you. I just have a couple of questions around a couple of risks. Risk 5, the risk is inability to attract and retain a skilled and competent workforce, and what I would consider 3 important areas: engagement and cultural strategy, recruitment strategy, learning and development strategy are not developed. I just wondered, we're always looking for some quick wins at council, and I just wondered on delivering of these. That's my first question.
They actually are in development. We've started, I've got a meeting on the 9th with the team, so we have started that piece of work. We're actually changing tact ever so slightly on how we're displaying it to make it more engagement and user-friendly, but we have 4 of our 5 key pillars which cover each of the cornerstones of the group already in development, and then we've got a work program that's going to support it, so we're actually probably optimistically 70% of the way there. So next up we should be able to disclose that, and that will also go to people and performance at the next meeting as well. So yeah, it's...
Those probably red is a bit harsh. Similar question too, just around risk 9, failure to develop and maintain effective communications with the community. And again, 2 key documents, community engagement framework and engagement toolbox, not developed. I wonder if it's a similar situation as Hannah. Again, quick wins, love a quick win.
Roll in C.
No worries.
The wellbeing strategy, that might be you too, Beth. Risk.
No, the wellbeing strategy is still engagement and culture, but I can speak to the community engagement framework. So that is almost completed, so I can confirm that, and it will be ready in time for the long-term plan consultations as per your last meeting's request.
I was figuring it might have to be done in time for that, so that's good to hear.
It's a fraction, very, very close. We are actually at the point where we are now socialising it with some staff, just to make sure that that is accessible and usable, user-friendly tools.
Mm. Thank you, Stacey. Did you get all your questions in? Sorry? Yeah. Okay, any other questions from folk? The only other one you can see that the reporting is great because we tend to follow the mitigations, ACMED. I'm not going to try and pursue much at this stage around the natural and built environment, but I'm just wondering if that's something of a sleeper for us because it's actually looking quite red in terms of the mitigations. And if you think about that in relationship to both the discussion we've had on climate change, the changing situation with the RMA, etc., I'm just wondering where we may or may not be going. And hello, we've got the development contributions policy back there we already talked about. So what that says is that actually these are very active risks. They are changing, and I sense in terms of the mitigations they are changing beneficially for us, I think is what I'm hearing right at the moment. Obviously the red is going to change colour in the way we've just heard. So it'll be useful and I think really important, for our workshop next meeting and also actually for the formal reporting in our papers that we do capture that, because it looks like it will be quite a different situation, which is encouraging. So thank you for that. Final round of nothing else to raise. Can we go to the risk improvement management program? This is a very helpful thing that that ACMED's keeping in front of us, which is, I always say we can be a talking gong here in terms of risk management, but if it's not embedded in the organisation, well, that's what we are. We're just a noisy gong. So I'm being very interested to see where this has gone. Do we have any questions for ACMED on that? I'd commend it to your reading, and I actually would particularly commend to you the attachment that ACMED has given to us, which is actually the way he's looking at the maturity of the organisation, the All-of-Government Enterprise Risk Maturity Assessment Framework. Struth. I can't even say that as an acronym, but is it ERMAF? The AOG ERMAF is well worth a read, because actually it starts to give you the nuances of what quite frankly, to use a NAF consultation phrases, what success looks like, what we should look like at Timaru, which would be good. Right, can we move then to the 2 other substantive things we have to do, which is to pick up on the risk management policy and the risk management framework. Do folk have any comments on the policy at this stage they'd like to raise? I've got a couple of comments, Ahmed, which I'm happy just to show you later on, but I think just a couple that I would like to add, well actually I might as well get them in here, is actually under the risk culture, paragraph 21. I'm hoping somebody can help me here. We say to promote a positive risk culture, absolutely endorse that 100%. Then we start off by saying all employees can talk openly about bad news. Now, I agree that we want to create an environment where we can raise these matters. I wondered if there was a more positive way of saying that actually, if it was possible. Something like, I mean, it's a bit naff, but all employees can openly talk about risks, uncertainty and issues without fear or blame. I mean, I'll leave that with you.
Internally, Bruce?
Yes, it's a very good point, internally. Yes, very good point, internally, before it becomes public. And I mean, it's things like risk event reporting is encouraged, and I'd like to say, and is seen as routine. Issues are identified for learning. Sorry, here we are. I found a typo. It's my chocolate fish for the day. Issues identified for learning purposes, continuous improvement, and I don't know, I can just try to say, and minimisation of future uncertainty. If we're going to learn from our issues, we want to try and do our best to reduce the uncertainty of that event going forwards. I want to add a new one in terms of risk culture, subject to everybody agreeing, which is that identified risks are to be owned. I'm a strong believer that we need to have an ownership of each of our risks. I have a little plan, ultimately, that I want to be able to, as a committee, meet with those owners over the strategic risks as they occur. I suppose we've had that to some extent this morning. So look, I've got some comments here around, none of them are showstoppers, other than, to me they're reasonably important, but I would just like to reflect, if you're happy after the meeting, I'm happy to show you those. Any other comments from folk? Looking like you're, Nigel, about to burst into something. Are you okay? Okay.
Bruce,
yes, Scotty. Sorry, then Janice.
More a general comment as well. I actually, strangely, enjoyed reading this. I actually did, very well done. And I like the general direction of travel here with what you're trying to achieve. And even simple statements like to develop and embed a risk-aware culture, not risk-averse. Elements of risk that may be potentially either beneficial. You know, it's a positive document, and it actually shows how, as a district, as an organisation, this helps to broaden the opportunities to develop and grow and to achieve our objectives, rather than those that will stop you achieving what you achieve. So, a general comment from me, very well done.
Hey, thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Brilliant, I agree. Janice.
A couple of things. I wondered if, given the early stages of this, if a 3-year review was a bit long, but it did say, or as appropriate, so I'll just leave that there. The risk appetite statements, have they been endorsed by council? It's Appendix A on page 122. Those risk appetite statements, have they been endorsed or up to council?
This was presented in the workshop.
They were at the workshop, yeah.
This was presented and discussed during the workshop, and since there was no major feedback or recommendation to change anything, so it's presented in the policy now.
There were hardly any councillors there. But I guess if they were invited, they're deemed to...
I think they come here first and then go to council. So if these are recommended to council, then that's where they go.
Okay.
So I wonder if I could add a comment to what you've raised, which I think is a very good one, Janice, is actually, I wrote down here, let's work with them to see if they suit us. But I think that therefore reinforces your point about review, that we should be quite tight on the review in case they are not working for us, because I looked and thought, oh gee, I'd like to go back and argue the toss over one or two of these, because actually I wonder whether we're putting ourselves in a straitjacket. I wonder if we are being a bit tight, but that's again just me. I'm not trying to relitigate this morning. What I do reflect is exactly your point that I think actually regular review would be good. I'd like to get us onto the cycle of using these, but I would be very interested to see and monitor, and ultimately if we had to amend these, if we're finding that they are creating challenges for us in our administration.
And if they're working really well, then pat on the back and great.
Yeah, but the review is the key part.
Yeah.
Yep, good. So is there something there that you'd like to suggest, Janice, that fixes that?
Well, I did think that a maximum 2 years, particularly at the early stage, 1 year to get it sort of embedded and actioned. You can
Yep.
do it earlier if you want, but
Yep.
I thought 2 years was probably the outside for the first go.
We're going to have, we could say by June 25, actually. I know that's not 2 years away, but in reality, we endorse these, send them up to council, we get them into play for a year. When it comes to our annual review of risks in June or thereabouts 25, it gives a chance to say whether they're working
looks like
or
he
not.
wants to say something.
Pardon?
Do you want to comment on that, Ahmed?
Have any sorry, no comments.
Pardon?
I'm saying I don't have any comments on this.
The other thing actually that Ahmed, that I had written down here, and it's to you, Nigel T, is these, in my view, are really important for how the organisation measures it. It goes back to the escalation thing and what have you. I'd really want to encourage you to I know you'll read these, sorry, that sounds a bit, that's patronising. What I'm wanting to reflect is actually if you see any devil in the detail of trying to implement these. I mean, I've had the arguments in other council meetings where if we have no appetite for risk around health and safety, as we discussed at the workshop, what does that really mean? Does that all of a sudden mean we close down everything in Caroline Bay because, you know, we might have injury? So I guess what I'm trying to say is I have a very open mind as to whether these are working for us or indeed whether they're not. And if they're not, we need to change something.
Gets down to the terminology of appetite, doesn't it? Because effectively we discussed that at the workshop. While we have no appetite for something, it doesn't mean that it necessarily won't always be perfect. But so long as we can acknowledge that and learn from it and put the mitigations in place, we should be fine. And it actually lends itself straight into that culture and engagement framework as well, because those two have got to be hand in glove.
And I think what I'm trying to reflect here, Nigel, is that if it create, you know, as we do the risk improvement program that you're dealing with, all of a sudden staff don't understand these, or indeed are starting to interpret in certain ways. Well, and if it's not helpful, we should as the leads come back and say we need to revise. Hence, back to Janice's point, I think if we could have a sense that we monitor these regularly, and particularly in 25, there is a bit of a fixed relook at these. Okay, brilliant. Any other comments on the policy? If not, can we move on to the framework, please? Any comments that folk would like to make about the framework? So the policy's good, the framework says how we're going to implement it. No? We're okay? Ahmed, my only comment was, and without the risk of making it sound like we haven't made decisions in the workshop, we had a discussion around Schedule D on page 137 this morning in the workshop, which is just perhaps some expansion and clarity on how risks are monitored. And you remember we had that discussion around high and the fact that 6 monthly, I think it was 6 monthly, whatever it is, the committee would see it. So it gets that bigger sense of whose eyes see this at what period. That would be helpful, please. Okay, I sense the day moving on, and in fact, it's midday. You've got lunch for us, Jess. I sense the day's moving on, and we've had a good crack at these. Can I then go back to the resolutions, please, which is a long way back, on page 84 of our agenda. So firstly, we received the strategic risk update. We've noted the comments and some actions out of that. We received the risk management maturity improvement plan, and we endorse the policy and the framework. So thank you, Nigel. Do I have a second to thank you, Peter? Is there any comment people like to make? There's none. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you very much. Now, I only heard about one eye, which suggests energy levels are getting a bit low. Are we keen to have a break for lunch now? How long do we need, guys? Half an hour? At most? Okay. Okay, half an hour? You okay?
Going for 20.
You're going for 20. This is a big decision. This is the toughest. Can we have a debate on this, please? 20 minutes, okay. We're keen to keep moving. So we still have a wee bit to get through. So if we could be back at 20 past, I'll come through and sound the gong at 20 past, which suggests it might be 25. But let's see if we can do it in 20 minutes. It'd be great. Thank you.